Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of my presentation, as you can see from my title there, is very straightforward. I am not talking about research. I'm not talking about the teachers, a little bit about the teachers, but mostly I'm going to talk about what happens in the classroom, whether and to what extent we have adequately addressed the needs of our students. Yaling, are you still there? Yaling, please turn on your video and audio. So again, whether and to what extent we have addressed the needs of our students. Yes, please stay on, Yaling. Yeah, video on and audio on as well. Okay, ladies, then, yes, good. So 3 things that I want to share with you. The first one is needs, whether and to what extent we understand the needs of our students today, and whether we have been able to address their needs, both in the classroom, that's point number 2, intramural learning in the classroom, and also outside the classroom. And then point number 3 is about what kind of teachers today that students are looking for in the classroom. So again, 3 points that I want to share with you, very straightforward. Needs of our students today, both in the classroom and also outside the classroom. And number 3, what are we looking for in the profile of a 21st century teacher? Okay, let me begin with the first one here. The first one is needs-based learning. Let me show you 2 pictures here. Yaling, you can help me here. Which one is your classroom? Does your classroom look like the first one or the second one? The top one of the bottom. I'm very happy that you say that. Yes, I think that should be happening. If your classroom is more like the first one, I think you have been able to address their needs. If your classroom looks more like the students in the second picture, then maybe you have not done a good job. But I'm sure you are a very nice teacher, you are a very good teacher, and I'm sure you have done a great job in addressing the needs of your students. I hope so. I am also hoping that I have been able to address the needs of my students. Okay, let's look at the needs of our students more carefully. When we look at our students in the classroom, the L2 second or foreign language learners in the classroom, what sort of needs are we looking at? I have here 4 major needs, and there's probably 1 or 2 more. The affective needs, the cognitive needs, the social needs, and finally, the linguistic needs. The first one, I put the first one, affective needs, as being number 1, because increasingly I see this as perhaps one of the most important needs that we need to address. The questions we need to ask is this: are your students feeling safe in your classroom? Are they feeling happy in your classroom? Are they having a lot of fun? Are they feeling excited when they're in the classroom? I think that is extremely, extremely important. The starting point is always the students, whether they are there with you, whether they are feeling excited to be and enthusiastic to be with you in the classroom. If we go back to what Gabriel said early on, it is the curiosita. If the students are excited, they will feel that they need to know more from you, from your lesson, and from the activities that you do in the classroom. The second one is cognitive needs. In the classroom, you need to create situations where your students keep on thinking, wondering, inquiring, and sometimes questioning as well. Again, feeling curious about what is happening in the classroom. What you need to do, what psychologists have called cognitive disequilibrium. So there's something that they want to deal with, something that they want to do in order to satisfy their cognitive curiosity. Yeah, extremely important. So that's the second need. The third need is social. Students are social beings. We are social beings. We want to interact. We want to connect. We want to share our learning experiences in the classroom with our peers and with many other people inside as well as outside the classroom. Yeah. And finally, the linguistic needs. At the end of the day, we are all language teachers. We are all concerned with helping students develop sufficient level of proficiency in whether it's in English, whether it's German, French, or any other languages. We want our students to become fluent users, competent users of the language. And today, in particular, the past 12 months, a lot of people are using technology. And I think that is another thing that we need to be able to work on, helping students to learn using technology. And there are many reasons for this, because our students these days are surrounded by technology outside the classroom. So they would expect the teachers to be using technology to support their learning as well. So these are more or less the needs of our students that we need to try to meet in our daily teaching, in our monthly teaching, in our assessment, and things like that. If you work with younger kids, younger students, behavioral or kinesthetic needs. I think students enjoy young children, they enjoy walking around the classroom, dancing, singing, drawing, and things like that. So you can add kinesthetic needs here as well. Okay. Now, since we are all language teachers, I will say a little bit more about the linguistic needs of our students, the language needs of our students. I think you and I agree that there are two types of needs that we have been trying to address, in our teaching to our students. Language knowledge, the needs of the students to know about the grammar, to know about the working of the language. And that's why a lot of us is teaching languages knowledge. In fact, in Uruguay, that's what Gabriel mentioned early on, language teaching, English language teaching in the classroom is very much like grammar teaching, basically, teaching about the language, teaching about the knowledge of the language. The second one, the second needs in terms of linguistic needs of the students is the need to be able to learn the language, to acquire the language, so that they're able to use the language for a variety of communicative purposes, for talking, for listening, for reading, for writing, for communicating with other people from different parts of the world. Yelling back to you. Which one is more useful for you? Which one is more useful for your students? First one, second one, both, maybe? Maybe the second one. The first one is not important? I like that. Yes, I hope that many teachers out there in the audience and many teachers out there in the world will say the same thing. Yes, a little bit of knowledge is important, but by and large, we need to help our students develop their ability to use the language. Knowledge about the language is probably useful at some point, especially at the early stage of learning, maybe a small piece of knowledge, but by and large, we need to address the other needs of our students. Now, let's look at very briefly what we mean by learning language as knowledge. I think this is something that most of us are very familiar with. So if you look at the pictures, I think you can immediately see that the teacher there is explaining, is talking about the language, explaining the grammatical rules of the English language. In other words, a lot of teachers are looking at language as an object of study. And in terms of the way the information is presented, you will also agree with me that teachers most likely use a linear type of presentation. Linear means this week they will focus on one item, and next week they'll focus on a new item, which is supposed to be more difficult than the first one. So linear, one at a time, step-by-step presentation. Very, very common still in many parts of the world. The third one, again, the teaching is very often very explicit. Yeah, you explain things very, very clearly to your students, you define all the grammatical terms to your students very, very clearly. And that is what usually happens. And that is what I mean by teaching or learning language as knowledge. On the other side of the coin is learning or teaching language as ability. Now, this one is different. You are treating language as a resource for communication. And interestingly, number two, research shows us very clearly that we don't learn language in a step-by-step fashion. This week, subject-verb agreement. Next week, simple past tense. We don't learn language that way. So language learning, I think researchers now agree, is a non-linear process. Non-linear, yeah. And lastly, very importantly, language learning is implicit in nature. A little bit of explicit knowledge is useful, but by and large, the linguistic knowledge that you have acquired in the classroom or outside the classroom will have to be implicit in nature. Why is that important? Why am I saying this to you? Why is the idea behind implicit knowledge is important? Let me cite a very, very good source, second language acquisition book published recently by Sean Lowen. This is what he says in his book. Yeah, and Yaling, can you please read this for me and for the audience? Slowly, yes, yes. Relatively. Yes, in a very simple word, your ability to speak, your ability to write, your ability to understand information in English depends on how much implicit knowledge you have, basically. And that is what this quote means. And this is not just him, the author here, saying this. This is based on years and years of research into the nature of second or foreign language acquisition. Yeah, so this is an extremely important quote for us language teachers to remember. So what is implicit knowledge actually? Well, implicit knowledge is often known or referred to as intuitive knowledge. The kind of knowledge that we sort of know we have, but we can't really explain. Yeah, but this knowledge is so important where second or foreign language learning is concerned. This is what implicit knowledge is all about. It's the kind of knowledge that enables you to do things with the language, number one, easily, number two, smoothly, number three, accurately, and number four, without thinking about it, effortlessly. Yeah, so that is what implicit knowledge of the language is all about. The question then is this. Yeah, so Yaling, we are going to look at this question together. How do you or how does one acquire this implicit knowledge of the language? And this is where we need to look at what is happening in learning inside the classroom. Intra means inside and extra means outside the classroom. Yeah, mural means condition, situation. So intramural or extramural learning. Intramural learning, these are things that happen in the classroom. I have nothing against language learning in the classroom. Yeah, it's good, it's a nice place, it's a good place for language learning. It is a safe place for the students to receive, to learn from you, to interact with students. Usually the lesson is very highly structured, where the students are learning things or language in an orderly manner. Yeah. However, please note that in the classroom, what often happens is the first one, the teaching of explicit knowledge of the language. So this is like the downside. Yeah, because we only have 40 minutes in the classroom, for example. So the easiest thing, the most efficient way to get our lesson done in 45 minutes is to explain to the students, to lecture to the students. So very, very common. And because of that, the teaching style of the teachers is, for us, for the teachers, oh, very nice, very interesting. But from the point of the students, not very interesting. They don't like that kind of teaching style. And because of that, students' engagement in learning is likely to be very low. Yeah, it's common everywhere in the world, not only in China, but also in Brazil, in many other places in the world, including in Singapore. What about this thing called extramural learning? What's the big deal about learning outside the classroom? Is it possible for us to bring in resources, affordances that are available outside the classroom into the classroom? I think that is something that recently has become the research attention of many second language researchers. How we can, combine, how we can benefit from language learning that happens in the classroom and also language learning that can happen outside the classroom. If we bring the two together, I think we will be meeting a lot of our students' linguistic needs along the way. Yeah. So let's look at briefly what extramural learning is all about. So essentially, extramural learning is learning outside the classroom. Yeah. And one great idea from the literature, again, from the research literature, is this. Outside the classroom, students get to be exposed to a larger and more interesting sources of language input. I think you may have heard about input, because input is a prerequisite for learning. Input is a precondition for language learning to happen. Yeah, if the amount of input is very minimal, then chances are students will not be able to acquire a lot of language. And we also know from the research that input is a great source of implicit knowledge. So that is the connection, yeah? Okay, so outside the classroom, we need a lot of input. We can spend time reading. We can, on our own, reading interesting things. We can also watch movies, YouTube videos, and many, many other sources. Let me cite another great book here from Professor Richard Day of the University of Hawaii. He wrote this book many, many years ago, and I was the first to write a review of this book in 1998 when the book was published. Yeah, okay. I'm going to ask Su Min now to read this, and that's the guy. Yeah, Richard Day. Su Min, you've got work to do here, Su Min.
Yes. I'm ready to participate. Read the sentence?
Yeah, yes, read slowly, yes. Good things.
Good things happen to students who read and listen a great deal in a foreign language. Research studies show they become better and more confident readers. They write better, the listening and the speaking abilities improve, and their vocabulary become richer.
Yes, the original quotation is reading. Reading is good, yeah? I have added listening as well, because listening is also very, very important. So a lot of reading using your eyes and a lot of listening using your ears. So these are the combined effect of language input, which is a great source of implicit knowledge. Yaling, do you remember what implicit knowledge is about? Implicit knowledge is, yes. What is that again? Do you remember? I'm sorry, I'm giving you a quiz. Yes, very good. Yes, very good. Yes, correct, yes. Again, for the audience, please remember, implicit knowledge is what is responsible for your ability to speak, to read, to understand, and also to write. Those of you who are interested in writing for academic purposes, writing for publication, I think you need a lot of input. Yeah. But like Larry said, you also need a little bit of explicit knowledge about, how research is done and how the journal article is usually written using a certain structures and conventions. Yeah, but by and large, I think you need a lot of reading and a lot of viewing and a lot of listening as well. If you're looking for some evidence, some empirical evidence, I can help you. I can find 2 meta-analysis studies that summarize past research studies, empirical intervention studies on extensive reading. The first one appeared in TESOL Quarterly about 5 years ago. And the second one, 1 year later, it appeared in another very good journal, Reading in a Foreign Language, edited by Professor Richard Day. More or less, this is what you see. Yeah, the effect of exposure to reading is quite substantial. In terms of its effect size, it's 0.5 is around 0.5, which is quite good. Yeah. Now, of course, some of you may not have access to empirical studies like this. Yeah. But I think what you can do is you can look at your own classrooms. You can find out from the best, the top students in your class and ask them questions. How do you acquire, such a very good level of proficiency in the language? And they will tell you the same thing. I can guarantee you that those students who are top performers in your classroom, maybe about 5 to 10%, I think they will tell you that they learn language in your class, but also outside the classroom. And most of them will tell you they learn from reading, from viewing, from watching TV series and things like that. Let me share with you some people whom I know, either from the reports in the research literature and also from my personal encounters with these people. This will give you an idea of the power of implicit learning. Now, this girl is from Korea. When she was interviewed by the researcher, she said that she had read about 1,000 English books. Talking about big books, yeah? We are talking about small books, novels, stories, interesting books that she had access to when she was a young student at home and also in school. Now, here are some other examples. Now, these are people that I know. The first one there, the lady there, is from Thailand. When I interviewed her, and she told me very briefly that she learned a lot of English from watching Disney cartoons. And then the boy below, he is from Vietnam. Now, he was a very avid reader. He read a lot of books that he enjoyed reading, and his IELTS score was very high, like 7.5. Not very common for high school students in places like Vietnam or Thailand or other places. And the last two ladies there, both are teachers. The first one told me that she watched a lot of movies. And the second one also said to me that she watched a lot of TV series when she was young. And both are very, very good. Both are very fluent, competent users of the English language. You may be wondering, some of you from small provinces in China or from low-resource countries, you may be wondering, where do we get all these wonderful, wonderful sources of books and video materials? I think nowadays it's very, very easy. 20 years ago, Sumin, remember 50 years ago, it was so difficult, right?
Yeah.
Reading materials were very limited. Video materials were very limited. But these days, it's very easy. You just need access to the internet. This one is completely free. You can watch like hundreds or even thousands of videos like this, where a well-known person like Kevin Costner here is doing the reading aloud for a young girl here on the right-hand side. Now, here is another one, a great resource. Now, this website, ELLLO, it has hundreds, if not thousands, of video materials that you can use for your students to improve on, to give them more opportunities to experience the spoken language. Hundreds, thousands, completely free. Asia Foundation for young children. If you work with young children, this is another great source. A lot of interesting, culturally appropriate stories from different countries in Asia, written in simple, easy English. Again, this one is also available for free. You just need to go to the website and then get your students access to all these books. Now, if you have little time, if you don't have access to the internet, if you are too busy to find sources of reading materials for your students or listening materials for your students, I would strongly recommend that you sign up, you subscribe to X Reading. What is X Reading? X Reading is a digital library of graded readers. In other words, it's online. Yeah, the books are always there. You can access all these 1,000 plus books 24 hours a day. You can read and you can listen anytime and anywhere. Yeah, it's a complete system for language learning purposes. It has a built-in learning management system. So if you are using this system, you can track your students' progress, you can assess their understanding, you can guide your students' selection of books, you can assign activities, you can even tell whether the students are cheating when they are not reading, but they are saying that they are reading the books. Yeah, let me say this again. It has more than 1,000 graded reading, easy reading materials for your students. Okay. Yaling, I'm done with the first 2 points. The first one again is the needs of our learners. Yeah. And the second one is learning in the classroom and learning outside the classroom. One key thing you need to remember is that if we want to really, really be able to address students' linguistic needs, then we need to get the students to take advantage of language learning, not only in the classroom, but also outside the classroom, intra and extramural learning. Number 3. Okay. Yes, I will give you a quiz at the end, Yaling. So please listen very carefully. So the third point is about the traits or the profile of 21st century teacher. 21st century teachers are you and me, basically. We are all 21st century teachers, yeah? So we need to really, really be able to, hey, Sabrina, my student is here from Gansu. Yu Min, yes. Hi, Yu Min. Okay. Yaling, please pay attention. Yeah, I will be sharing with you six characteristics, 6 traits of a 21st century English language teacher. The first one is the teacher. Yeah, a 21st century teacher will need to have a growth mindset. I think this is very much like what Gabriel said earlier on. We need to be willing to change. We need to continue to learn, and we need to grow professionally. Yeah, improving on our teaching, and occasionally you may want to do research, action type of research that you can use as a basis for improving on your teaching. Growth mindset. Growth mindset is a very, very interesting idea. Essentially what it says is that everyone, you and me, whether you are a young teacher, senior teacher, very, very senior teacher like Larry, we can all grow. We can continue to grow until forever, basically. Yep. So we need to, and if we are able to grow, then it becomes easier for us to embrace change, because change is everywhere. Change is constant. The moment we stop changing, that's the end of our career, and that's the end of our profession as a teacher. And point number 3 is extremely important in today's world. Yeah, the world is changing very, very fast. And we need to be willing to learn, to relearn, and to unlearn. Yeah. A great lesson for all of us. We need to be willing to unlearn many things that we learned before. Yeah, it may have been a very good things that we learned in the past, but these may not be relevant today because the world has changed. The students have changed. Their needs have changed. So we need to be willing to relearn and also to unlearn things that we have learned before. I think the past 12 months, I've been undergoing this tremendous, changes in my professional career. as a teacher, as a language teacher, educator as well. Yeah, that's point number one. T number one is the teacher, having a growth mindset, being willing to embrace change, and being willing also to admit and to say that what I did 5 years ago was not good. What I did 10 years ago was wrong. Now I'm learning new things in order to address the needs of my students. In terms of teaching method, that's T number two. Yaling, remember T1 is the teacher, yeah? T number two is teaching method. Increasingly, this is what is expected of us. Yeah, I think you have heard about this student-centered pedagogy, student-centered curriculum, student-centered learning. But how many of us have actually embraced this pedagogy? Maybe about 10% of us. The rest are still using the old way of teaching, known as the teacher-centered pedagogy. Yeah. So increasingly, I think we need to embrace, to learn how to engage students using this student-friendly teaching method. Things like project-based learning, things like inquiry-based learning, these are more student-centered. The teacher's job here is to provide guidance, to provide overview, but the learning is the responsibility of the students. You allow the students to explore, to find out from themselves using resources that are available in the classroom and also outside the classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, knowledge does not belong to us teachers anymore. No more. Knowledge does not stay in our university. No more. I think knowledge now is everywhere. And knowledge, the greatest source of knowledge today, information and knowledge, is the internet. And we have to embrace that. Yeah, if you use project-based and inquiry-based learning methodology, I think you will be empowering your students to develop this self-regulated learning or to develop strategies that will help students to learn on their own, even way after they finish their studies with you. Flipped classroom is another way of engaging your students. Before they come to your class, give them something, motivate them to do initial learning on their own before they come to your class, so that in your classroom you can spend your time actually engaging your students in a deeper level type of learning in the classroom. Yeah. So T number two is teaching method. Yeah. Yaling, remember T1 is the teacher. T2 is teaching method. Very good. Very good. Number three is the text. T number three is the text. The text here refers to teaching materials. Anything that you use to support student learning. Written materials, online materials, even your PowerPoint slides. Now, those are all teaching materials, which I would refer to as the text. Videos, YouTubes, and things like that. Remember this quote. Yeah. Very easy to remember. I think you need to memorize this. I memorize this. I remember this. In the absence of interesting texts, very little is possible in the classroom. So the teacher may be a wonderful person. Yeah, the teaching methodology may be excellent. But if the text, the materials are not interesting, I think not much learning can happen in the classroom. Again, from language learning theories and research, we know that where language acquisition is concerned, where supporting students in language is concerned, you need to make sure that the text, number one, is compelling. Compelling is not just interesting. Compelling is so exciting that the students want to read and reread and continue reading. Yeah, the materials will have to be compelling. And number two, it has to be comprehensible as well. Again, that's another crucial, critical, idea behind the input theory. It has to be compelling. It has to be comprehensible also. And number three, make use of multimodal and digital text as well. Simple reason. Now, texts like this are likely to be more interesting, more appealing to your students, than printed materials. Remember this, yeah, digital materials. Students, this is a citation actually from a source by Richard Mayer. Students can learn with text alone. They can also learn with images alone. Digital texts are multimodal, but they can learn more with, can you fill in the blank, Yaling? A quiz for you. The answers are, yeah, the answers are there in the first. Yes, yes. Yes. So they learn more with, the answers are there in bold. They can learn with text and images together. So that's the answer, yeah? Okay, good. Yes, virtual reality is of course wonderful because you've got the text and you've got the images. You can, you know, moving images as well. Yeah, but the idea is that try to make use of digital text because research tells us that learning is best facilitated when the students are able to see words and also pictures and also other elements of a learning text. Yeah. Agree. Yes. The words and the pictures support the students' learning as well. Here are some of the benefits of digital text. I'm sure you are aware of this. Digital texts are shareable, and that increases the amount of interaction that the students can have with the text. So it's not just something for them to read, but also to share. And in this way, they can interact with the teachers, they can interact with the other students. And number 3 is annotatable. Nowadays, there's a lot of applications out there, free applications that allow students to write notes on their, on their screen. Yeah, and if you're using, for example, video materials, instead of asking students to watch a video which is half an hour long or 1 hour long, you can break up the video, you can insert questions, discussion tasks, again, using applications like Edpuzzle. Yeah, Edpuzzle is free. I don't know if you have access to Edpuzzle. And there are many other applications like Edpuzzle that you can use. I'm sure in China, there are a lot of applications that you can use to make your video lessons more interesting, to make your video lessons more interactive, to get the students to think as they watch the video. Yeah. So T number 3 is the text. T number 4, Yaling, is the task. Yes, the teacher is important. The teaching method that you use is important. The text is also very important. But much more important is probably this, the task. What do you want your students to do with the text in the classroom? Remember the 5E. 5E. Yeah. Now this 5E will help your students to become fully engaged in your lesson. Yeah, the first one is engage, explain, explore, elaborate, and evaluate. Yeah. Sumin, you can invite me again and I'll explain to you what all these 5 wonderful E's mean. Next year, you can, but for today, let me just try to connect this with what we discussed earlier on. Yeah, if you really, really want to address the affective, the cognitive, and the social needs of your students, then the 5E will have to be present when you design a learning task, whether it's a project, whether it is something that you want your students to do in the classroom or outside the classroom. Yeah, the affective, the cognitive, the social, and sometimes the kinesthetic needs of the students as well will be addressed. Yeah, that's T number 4. T number 5 is the test. I know that traditionally the test is the most difficult thing for you to deal with because it's determined by the country, by the policy, language policy of your country, and there's nothing much that you can do to change. But recently, I've heard a lot of exciting things happening in China. In fact, last week, I attended a wonderful, wonderful presentation by a professor from Guangdong University, Liu Jianda. I think he is in charge of the big, massive, change or renovation or innovation in terms of how teachers can assess students' ability to actually use language for communication.
Yeah, Professor Liu Jianda's main research into is about assessment and testing.
Exactly, yes. I think he talked a lot about portfolio assessment, basically. Yeah, I think you all know that there are two types or maybe three different types of assessment. Assessment of learning. This is something that we are all very familiar with. But nowadays, the tendency, the trend is for teachers to also be more aware, be more mindful of the importance of process-based assessment. So assessment for learning. Yeah. Portfolio assessment is one example of how we can teach and assess the students at the same time over a longer period of time. So this kind of test is usually smaller and more frequent. I know it's not easy, but it's the right change in the right direction, I think. And then another point that I want to get across to share with you is that we now can assess our students' linguistic ability, proficiency in reading, writing, and so on and so forth in multiple ways, in many, many different ways. For reading, for example, if you're looking for ideas, just go to the internet and then type different ways of checking for understanding. And you'll be surprised that there are hundreds and hundreds of ideas out there, ideas that we haven't thought about before, because we are so used to doing things in a certain way in the classroom. For example, in the reading lesson, now here is a reading passage, read this, try to understand, and then answer 10 questions, yeah? Very, very typical. You'll be surprised that there are many, many different ways of assessing, of checking, or of supporting students' understanding using visual, type of assessment, kinesthetic kind of assessment, verbal, and many other different ways. That's number 5. Yaling, this is the last one. Technology. Okay, technology, again, today we are expected to know a little bit. We don't need to be an expert in using technology for education or for teaching purposes, but I think we need to know a little bit about technology so that we can engage our students using these new ways of learning and teaching. And going forward, I think we will be doing a lot of online and also on-site. Now, in both cases, technology is going to be important. Even when you are teaching physically in the classroom, you will still need to use technology. I am really, really happy when I see a lot of new tech tools in the past 12 months, and they are so good, they are so useful. And I've been using those tools myself in our teaching. The question to us is this: Sumin, can technology or does technology improve learning? What is the answer to that?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Yes.
It can improve our learning
yes.
and teaching.
Yaling, yes. Yes, okay. It's a trick question. It's not a yes/no kind of answer. Now we need to be very careful here. I like what this guy is saying, this professor of education. To improve education, I think we need to focus on pedagogy and not just technology. Technology doesn't change anything. It is how we use technology that integrates technology. It is how we teach that integrates technology that can make a difference to our students' learning. Yeah, be very careful with that. So one thing to remember for us is this: we should use technology to enhance our pedagogy. Point number 1. And point number 2, more practical stuff. As I said earlier on, you don't have to be an expert. Try to find easy to use applications, easy to use tech tools. And if you don't have money, just like me, I don't have a lot of money, use the ones that are free, or at least use the one that have the free versions that we can use in the classroom. Yeah, the next question is which one and how many? 100 different kinds of applications? No. Now, these are very, very useful tools that I have used in my own teaching. Very easy to use, and they are free. Like I said early on, I know a little bit about technology, but I'm no expert. I learned how to use this the past 12 months. And these are really, really useful. I don't know if they are accessible in China. The first one is linked to Google. So the first one may not be available, but I think something similar to it may be available in China. Essentially, when we create our PowerPoint slides, usually it's a straightforward, this is my materials, read the whole thing, yeah? Now, Peer Deck is an application that allows you to insert questions, discussion tasks, and the students can interact with you through your PowerPoint slides. So it's an interactive PowerPoint slides that you can create now using Google Slides. Mentimeter, I think this one is very popular. Yeah, you can check your students, you can assess your students' understanding from time to time. You can do a poll, you can do a survey, and things like that. Wakelet, I don't know if this is available, but this is a wonderful, wonderful tool. It's a digital wallet, if you like. You can put materials, you can put video links, you can put PDF files in Wakelet, and you can also ask questions for the students to respond. Wonderful, wonderful thing that I've used. The next one is Padlet, Flipgrid, and also Edpuzzle. You can just go to the internet and find out how these things work. As I said earlier on, these are easy to use. If I can use it, you can too. Yeah, I'm not an expert in technology. Now, these are really, really very easy and very useful to use. Yaling, the six T's now. Do you remember the T1 is the teacher, T2 teaching method, very good. T3 the text, yes. T4 the task. T5 yes. I think we're missing one. Yes, the final one is technology. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have shared with you very, very simple ideas. Today, we need to address our students' needs, not only their linguistic needs, but also their affective needs, their cognitive needs, their social needs, and also maybe their kinesthetic, yeah, and affective and kinesthetic needs, yeah. Now, this can be done while you are teaching them in the classroom, but you should also consider bringing affordances from outside the classroom into the classroom as well. In this way, you will be addressing your students' needs more adequately and more satisfactorily. And finally, I have shared with you what I feel are important for teachers to have, the 6 characteristics of 21st century teacher. But what is important to remember for you and me now is this: change is happening so fast, and we need to be willing to learn. We need to be willing to relearn, and also we need to be willing to unlearn. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening.